Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Anthony Salas, and on behalf of the American Marketing Association, I'd like to welcome you to today's webcast sponsored by Cardinal Path and titled How Bombardier Recreational Products Jump-Started Their Digital Marketing Success. We here at the AMA provide you with this webcast as one of the many special programs that we offer to the marketing community, and we invite you to participate in this ongoing series of free web seminars to help you drive the greatest return on your marketing investments. Make sure to join us every week for these informative thought leader webcasts that feature some of the most expert minds in marketing. And you can see a full list of upcoming webcasts if you go to ama.org/webcast. And before starting today, just a few housekeeping items to go over. We are recording the full presentation, and it will be made available to you by Cardinal Path after today's live portion, so please look for that coming your way via email, along with a white paper that they will be sharing. So a couple of things coming your way after the live portion. If you have any questions as the presentation goes on, please use the chat feature that you should see to the left of your screen. Any technical questions you might have, you can enter in that area as well. We will address those immediately upon receipt. And content-related questions, we do encourage you to enter at any time as the presentation goes on. We will address those at the end of the formal presentation, but again, enter them at any time that your question does arise. And if you're able to join us today on Twitter, we would love to have your participation there. Hashtag for today's webcast is CP Digital Marketing, so please engage with the other participants there. Now, my pleasure to introduce the two presenters that are joining us today. We are being joined by Mathieu Nazan, who is the Manager of Digital Marketing with Bombardier Recreational Products, as well as Stéphane Hamel, who is the Director of Innovation with Cardinal Path. And both gentlemen have a lot of great information to share with you today. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Mathieu, who is going to start today's presentation.
Hi, thank you, Anthony, for that. Hello and good afternoon, everybody. It's a nice and crispy minus 27 here in Valco, so I hope you're all nice and cozy there. Before we pass the core of the presentation to Stéphane from Cardinal Path, I just wanted to sort of give you a little background on how we got to working on this digital marketing experience that, for analytics that we went through. Just to give you some background, BRP has a long history of innovation and performance. More than ever, digital has become a key pillar for marketing performance. The digital marketing challenge that we had over the course of the past year was that over the past years we were in an ecosystem with too much data and too many measuring tools that we were dealing with from brand to brand and from an enterprise. So we had too many hands on the steering wheel, if I can say, and too many versions of the truth from different brands and even partners. So this was creating a loss of trust and confidence in the decision making in order to optimize our marketing investments, either traditional or digital. So rather than tackle the issue with one big bite, we opted for an iterative approach with the Can-Am Off-Road Pilot Project. Now, here's what we're showing you is that the situation is we had too much data, which you see here on this slide. A lot of information, but not enough time and effort dedicated to knowledge and taking actions for decisions from a marketing perspective. So we have to reverse this. This was our objective, is to reverse this and put more time and spend more energy on knowledge and taking actions rather than spending time working on compiling data, trying to find if it's the right data, and arguing on the type of information that we're getting out of it. So we're not making those clear decisions. So we collectively had to come up with an objective. And the objective for this pilot project was to reach 20% in effectiveness with our marketing investments. And to achieve this goal, it was critical to build a solid foundation. That was the key. And how And this would include solid analytics governance within the company and with our partners, so that everybody was sort of shaking hands together and trying to solve problems together. So we also had to, clean and find that we have reliable data to work with. And that was key as well. And also working on the right tool, that was also very important for us. And ultimately, have a gain in productivity so that marketers were able to make those right decisions and spend time in terms of analyzing and learning about what's going on. So to help us get there, well, we needed the subject matter experts to come and help us and guide through the process. And that's where we called upon Cardinal Path with their long experience in this type of issue. So without further ado, I'd like to pass it on to Stéphane Hamel from Cardinal Path. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mathieu. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to share the great work, the great experience we've been working on over the past several months with BRP, which is, of course, yes, we do have a lot of experience and everything, but it's actually pretty interesting to see how BRP was willing to put aside some of the status quo or sometimes resistance that we can see with other clients where BRP went right into a true desire to change the way things were working. So a big tip of the hat to Mathieu and his team for that. That was really the way to go. And again, thanks a lot, Mathieu, for the introduction. There's nothing better than actually hearing it from the client itself. But also, I guess, oftentimes when we do presentations at conferences, people wonder, how does it look like? What's the end result? And that's what we're going to talk in the next 45 minutes or so, and then go into some Q&A. So I'm going to share some interesting tidbits. Of course, some of it is very good, very positive, and there's always those little, okay, here's what we learned, and here's the experience we got out of it. So ultimately, as Mathieu was mentioning, we wanted to provide, and it's probably a concept that you've heard before, we wanted to provide the right data at the right time to the right people so that they could empower, that we were able to empower confident decisions. And that applies to BRP internal teams, of course, which are marketing and sales and customer support. Everyone is part of that, and finding a common ground for governance, for KPIs, for communication, including the partners, which are obviously numerous in that context. You have your web development team, you have your marketing strategy agency, and so on and so on. So here's a little glimpse, and I will get back to that later on in the presentation, but here's a little glimpse of one of the results of that work. We agreed collectively through the governance that was put in place that there would be a number of KPIs that we wanted to show, and it was also agreed, of course, that we wanted to, during the campaign, we wanted to have a week-over-week view of the performance of that campaign. So I'm just showing a little abstract of the dashboard with fake numbers. But there's a couple of things that are interesting, and to get there, it took a fair amount of collaboration, agreement, even trial and error, and finding what is the best way to present information. So we ended up using Tableau software in that case, but we are showing week over week. We see the variation from week to week. We have a spark line from the beginning of the week with an indicator of the target on a weekly or daily basis, and the total campaign to date, either for web visits or number of goals completed, a cost per goal, and so on. and we and of course, are we aligned with that objective? So, the typical up and down arrows and green lights and red lights. There were a number of KPIs, and what's interesting about BRP is actually they do, for those who maybe don't know the brand that much, they do Sea-Doo watercraft, they do Can-Am ATVs, they do Ski-Doo snowmobiles. So Can-Am Off-Road was really the first of multiple brands that are going to be addressed, and it was our pilot project. So obviously, we never start from a blank slate. There's always legacy. There's always a history. There's always a reason why the things are the way they are. We looked at the current state when we started. What was there? And what we found was, I would say, not unusual. I won't go through every details, but you can get an idea of the type of things that we often see with clients, and those are, thank God, they were not all issues with BRP. They are a list of things that we see often with clients. But from a foundational perspective, the instrumentation, the way the data is being collected was not accurate, was not adequate. There were many different data sources, and some of them were telling different stories, even if they were talking about the same type of metrics. There was no standard at all, so you could get an agency coming in and presenting some results, and they would I would say the topic of the presentation could be about how many clicks came from a campaign, while in reality what BRP was more interested in is was my investment bringing qualified traffic that is turning into leads for sales. So that was an interesting shift in the discussion, where it went from talking about visits and clicks to talking about leads and sales. So that was a big shift in a matter of, I would say, a couple of months, or the duration of that campaign for that brand. From a usage perspective, some people who needed to have visibility over the data didn't have it, and some other people had access to it, but it was not quite the right information that they really needed to make decisions. And the results, obviously, there was, as Matthew was mentioning, a lot of data, a lot of information, but the insight that was coming out of it was a bit limited. And oftentimes what was happening is the agency would come in and present the results for the past week. But that was really the first time that BRP was seeing those graphs and those numbers. So the only thing they could do during the meeting is, okay, I see something going up, something going down. Here's some numbers, but the level of decision that could be done during that little time frame of maybe 1 hour was very limited. Now what's happening is BRP and the agency and everyone involved actually have access to the data whenever they need to, and they see those results before the meeting. So when you have that 1 hour meeting where everyone is so busy and the time is very limited, now that 1 hour can be used to make decisions. So they are not looking at the numbers for the first time, but they are really talking about what does it mean? Why is it like this? Why is the performance better or worse than last week? And then having enough time during the meeting to make decision and say, okay, here's the action plan, here's what we're going to do about it, and we can get back to it the following week. The other aspect also was, and that one is still, I would say, still under work, there was no real historical knowledge. Every campaign was a new campaign. Every time something was done, there was no real historical data to really, okay, how do I set the target? What's the target of my campaign if I didn't have the measurement of the last campaign that looked similar to it? So there was no real predictability over what can we expect. Is it reasonable? Matthew mentioned the 20% marketing effectiveness. What's really interesting about that goal is it's a vision of where we want things to go, and that honestly, that 20% was we didn't have enough hard numbers to come up with that 20%, but we all agreed that 20% was something that could be realistic and achievable. And the way to get there was to see it as a series of small improvements that we can make over time. So maybe on one point it's going to be about saving some dollar and bring more qualified traffic. Maybe it's going to be because you can get effectiveness also by doing things faster, so you can make decisions faster, and that has an impact on the bottom line. Or it could be just about removing some of the low-value tasks, like cleaning the data or managing the data that takes so much time. If we could automate that, then we would gain effectiveness from a marketing standpoint, because people's time would be better used at doing something else than cleaning some data and things like that. Of course, the single vision of the truth, I think, is a very common issue. We get data from different data sources. We get different numbers. And there's probably nothing worse than ending in a meeting where you are talking about some dollar value, and someone raised the question, well, how come I don't have the same number from this other system? So that's something we absolutely wanted to avoid. So those are some of the diagnostic, and honestly, we see that all the time with our clients, where we need to do something about those things. And I'm sure you've seen that, and you probably even have other issues that we would like to add to the list. So we really needed to do something about that. And the way to address it was to look at the concept of digital analytics maturity, where essentially it's something that came from the academic side of things that I worked on while I was doing my e-business MBA, but really stems from years and years of experience working with e-business and web and a ton of clients in different geographies, different verticals. So the thought process was, okay, we know doing digital analytics is something that is not super easy. There's always a ton of issues. So what are the driving factors that could lead us to greater success? And through some research and all the work that was done, we came up with 6 different areas that need to be addressed if you want to be successful. So without going into many details, that's actually, we're going to follow up with a white paper that explains more about the digital analytics maturity model. And the important thing to know is if you don't address those 6 dimensions, your chances of success are much lower. So if you don't have proper governance in place, if you don't define the objectives correctly, some of those are we hear that all the time and might sound obvious, but most of the time we spend too much energy arguing about, should I use this tool or this tool to measure my website? Which social media service is going to be the better to tell me how good I'm doing on social media? So we spend so much time talking about the tools and the technology that we actually don't address the other 5 dimensions, which includes the team and the skills and the expertise of the people that either you have internally within your team, or the partners with whom you're working to help you out. And of course, the process and the methodology. How do you go from collecting the data down to all the steps to actually make a decision and empowering the right people within the organization? So with BRP, and that's why early on I was mentioning that's something exceptional about BRP, about this project, is they actually trusted that we could address all of those 6 dimensions. So part of the concept also is, of course, you want to do a maturity assessment. So look at the strengths and weaknesses, where you are today, so that you can plan a course of action and define a roadmap that will get you to where you want to be. The other aspect is, if you are very, very strong in one dimension, but you are weak in the other, the gap between the two is another risk in your roadmap. So it's much better to start small, at a lower scale, but be well aligned on all those 6 dimensions, and gradually grow your expertise, rather than what we see most of the time is some aspects are very, very strong, but there are weak or weaker areas that needs to be addressed. So that was the assessment. So the first, and you see a little graph, the result of the BRP assessment in the bottom left, where you see that it's actually pretty low, and there's one of the dimension, which is the scope, was higher than the other, but the process and methodology was actually very low. So everything was done, or most of the things were done in an ad hoc fashion. So there was no building the collective knowledge around analytics and around marketing success. Every opportunity was a new, starting from scratch method or doing it in a different way. So we looked at establishing a foundation. And establishing the foundation included defining governance was probably one of the first aspects that was covered. And governance includes who are the stakeholders, who's going to be involved. And we see, of course, Mathieu is part of the Center of Excellence in digital marketing, but his team is essentially providing services to all of the marketing departments, because there are many different brands with many different geographies or target markets. Then there are several marketing departments. There's, of course, the CRM team that handles the leads. BRP is essentially the model, the vertical is very similar to automotive. We could even say it is identical to an automotive environment, where you have a manufacturer and the products are distributed through dealers. So the manufacturer responsibility is to ensure that when people come to the website, we can turn them into qualified leads that can be handled by the dealer network and turn into real sales. But there is a gap. What happened at the dealership is more fuzzy. It's not as obvious, because we don't know how each dealer is going to handle those leads. So the CRM aspect is very important there. IT, of course, for all their access to data and processes, and making sure security is correct and the data is right, and so on. And then a series of tools and services that we use, be it like Tableau, like I mentioned, or be it using services to measure social media, for example. And then the agencies, there are numerous agencies, and sometimes different, not all marketing department works with the same agencies, depending on market, depending on expertise. So we wanted to have them around the table. And of course, Cardinal Path playing a role in there to basically support and do knowledge transfer and help alleviate any difficulties that might be found during the whole project, the whole process. So governance, who has access to the data, what kind of KPIs do we want, how do we standardize on specific tools so that we don't end up with similar tools measuring the same thing. So that was one of the aspects. So that was, let's say, an especially interesting aspect because it went very smoothly. And honestly, one of the lessons learned is sometimes you will have the role of Cardinal Path coming in there was an interesting side effect of that, was that sometimes you might have a way of viewing things internally that you try to communicate to your agency, or the agency is trying to communicate, here's the strategy, or here's the tactic that you should use for this campaign, but there's a little bit of a disconnect. And one of the roles that was interesting that I played was to bridge the gap when there were some misunderstanding or miscommunication to bring everyone together around the same table, the same table. And then the other important aspect that we looked at is, okay, if we are going to optimize digital marketing, or we should say optimize marketing, we need to understand what is the customer lifecycle. So we all know that there's paid, earned, and owned media, and at the same time we know there's print and TV advertising. People might come to the website, or they might go to the dealer website directly, or maybe they will skip all of that altogether and go directly to the dealer. So understanding what is the dynamic of customers coming to our sites, or maybe not, and understanding how we can influence those people to become qualified leads and go at the dealership. So qualified lead is an interesting concept because in the automotive industry, the key component of the website is the build and price feature. That's the key element of the website. And when you reach the end of the build and price feature, you have many options. Oftentimes we'll see patterns of people coming. If you think about how you shop for a car, for example, you will come to the site multiple times. You will start the build and price process, maybe drop it along the way. You will go find some other reviews and go to competing manufacturers and so on. So understanding that dynamic was really important. And then you have the dealer relationship where that's where there's a kind of a gap or a black hole. We know that we're sending people to the dealership, but we don't know what happened at the dealership. The important thing is to bring them there and trust that the dealer are doing their job, and they are, to convert people coming in the store into clients. And the interesting aspect in this context is dealer manage their own inventories. So what's interesting is BRP will actually know that there was a sale when the vehicle is coming back for warranty, when the vehicle is being registered by its real owner for warranty. So that's when BRP is able to close the loop and know that, okay, this lead where someone asked for credit, for example, or any contact information they could gather, they will eventually be able to close the loop and know that, okay, this warranty registration came partially because that person who registered on the website and did such and such eventually went at the dealership and did a purchase. And then again, you have all the service and post-sale where people obviously will go again at the dealership, and that's another kind of more difficult aspect to measure, but we see some of that coming in. At the bottom, what we have is realizing that different partners, different tools, different technologies plays a different role in that ecosystem. So you have maybe you work with a marketing strategy agency that will help you set the bigger goal, the bigger objectives. And then you have people that are, or agencies that are more specialized into executing the tactics of that strategy. And you have your team doing market research, you have analytics and so on. So what's important to realize is nobody is going to be able to have a true end-to-end view of that. And that's where governance is going to play its role again, is to try to bring a common vision and common understanding of what happened all the way through the sales and service afterward. So that was the foundational aspect of the project. And then based on that, what we went into is a pilot project. And very early on, we discussed the possibility of doing customer lifetime value, advanced attribution of sales, because if you do attribution of your campaign source, and based on what happened on the website, you do attribution of the ability to bring people to the website, which is bring people to the website and have them do something on the website, which is good. But real attribution is about sales. It's about turning people into real clients. So the web, in that perspective, it's just a mean to an end. And the end result is, the reality is, I don't care if you do a build and price, if you never convert. What I care about is understanding why you didn't convert, and of course, eventually why you converted. But understanding why something doesn't happen is very often is almost more important than understanding why it actually happened. So the pilot project was a way to see the whole thing as an experiment, and on two aspects. One was an experiment from a pure marketing standpoint. So they tried new tactics and a new strategy during the campaign, which honestly was I was not really part of that, because my main interest was about the digital and analytics aspect. So having the luxury and the flexibility to say, we're going to try new ways of measuring things. We're going to try a different way of measuring the TV impact on lead generation. We're going to try different ways of combining multiple data sources together and seeing if we can make sense of it, and if there are any interesting patterns that we can find in the data. And of course, there were a lot. So the pilot project was done in a way where, if initially we had said, okay, we have the blue sky approach where we're going to have all the data we need, the data is going to be perfect, we're going to have all the tools and all the time and all the resources we need, and we're going to have wisdom. It simply doesn't make sense. So having a pilot project is a way to start small. We know what is the end goal. We know where we want to go, but it gives us the ability to say, along the way, we're going to realign, we're going to reassess where we are going. So we went into an iterative approach, and it was the perfect way of doing it. Selecting one brand in one market, and while the marketing strategy or the tactics were being executed, looking very closely at what kind of data we can gather from that. Of course, we already had a pretty good idea of what we wanted to do when we started, obviously, but we learned a lot just by allowing us to have an iterative approach and having the right to fail, or I should say the right to learn, because when you fail, when something doesn't work as expected, you learn a lot. And the whole team and the partners and everyone involved was in a mindset of, okay, let's try it, see what happens, and if it doesn't do exactly what we want, we can readjust and reassess and see if it's really worth it. Perfect data or perfect decision is really, really hard to come by, and can be very, very costly. So the greater the confidence in your decision, usually the longer it's going to take to get there, and the more expensive it's going to be to have that level of confidence. So what is the minimum amount of information that you need to have confidence in your decision? And of course, data-informed decision, but data on its own doesn't make any decision. So we can't imagine a manager making decisions without any data, but it would also be stupid to manage in a way where the data tells you what you need to do. You need the experience, you need the human judgment to assess all the factors that are coming in, and data is just there to inform that process. So having the right to learn and try new things, and reassess very often where you are, what's coming up, what works, what doesn't work. I think the transparency of everyone involved being able to say, you know what, it doesn't work as I was expecting it. And that openness to say that, I had a manager once actually telling me that if I didn't raise the flag to say something was wrong, it was actually, even if it was coming from my manager, we should be allowed to tell anyone involved, not that what they are doing is wrong, but the result that we were expecting is not what we thought it would be, and then realign and reassess. The underlying aspect, and we were talking about the foundation of it, having the complete, precise, and relevant instrumentation means using web analytics to collect the right data at the right time for the right purpose. It doesn't mean collecting everything in case we need it, because that becomes expensive and it adds to the confusion. Too much data sometimes is not any better than no data at all, because you don't know. We've seen many people going into their web analytics tool of choice, and it's a bit like when you go on YouTube and you start watching, you go there to watch one video, and then you realize that you've wasted an hour or two of your time looking at kittens in videos and stuff like that. So for geeks like me, going into a web analytics platform, I've seen people that will just go everywhere, look at everything, but in the end, there's no purpose, there's no reason, and they just waste their time. So we want to avoid that. So the right data was a critical aspect of that, and standardizing how it's being done. And in that case, the Can-Am brand website was also used to standardize the instrumentation, and then we can apply the same level of quality across the other brands. That was part also of the pilot project. Next was, I mentioned the importance of understanding the customer life cycle. So if we take a very simple approach of a typical funnel where you have awareness, familiarity, consideration, acquisition, and loyalty, one of the things we did, and that's just an example, I urge you to think about your customer life cycle, your funnel essentially, and describe it in your own language and with the right steps for your own industry. That's the starting point to understand what KPIs you will want to measure. Because the KPI is what it is, what it should be, is a measure of your ability to move someone down the funnel. So move someone from awareness to familiarity, and from familiarity to consideration. So for Can-Am, what we decided to do was to have 20% of the KPIs that would be centered around awareness, and 80% of the KPIs would be centered around consideration, acquisition being really when a sale happened at the dealership, and we realized and we agreed that, okay, we won't be able to go that far now, but if we work on consideration aspects, it means we're going to be able to move the needle and bring more qualified traffic to the dealers. So that was another, and I'll spare you the list of performance indicators. So some of them are key performance indicators, but we had a ton of different performance indicators, all things that were useful to measure, but maybe not the most critical. So what we did in our dashboarding was we had the KPI sheet that I showed early on, and then we had a number of specialized views, and each one was centered around a specific area of improvement. So for example, one was about website optimization. So what kind of information do you need to be able to understand what's going on your website, who's coming, what they are doing, is it working or not? So we had a set of views and set of measures around that. And we had other views like, if we do display advertising, can we have a set of metrics and measurement around that specific performance? So which publisher is the best? Which ad version is the best? Which size is the best? Which one is the most cost effective? And one of the shifts throughout that process was last year campaign. The agency was talking very much about the ability to bring traffic to the website. So if they were bringing a ton of visits from a pure agency perspective or marketing perspective, the job was done. Hey, I brought a ton of traffic to your website, then it's your job. Once I brought them there, it's someone else's job to convert those people into leads. By having the governance and agreement on the KPIs, everything was centered around the cost of bringing those leads. So it was either cost per goal or cost per lead. Everything was brought back to the centered or the most important aspect, which is how much does it cost to bring all of that traffic and convert them. So the result of that was a gain in agility. We saw that very early on, or gradually throughout. It increased by the end of the pilot, and we also see that going with the other brands. We're obviously not starting from scratch. We learned so much that it's actually much faster to apply the same concepts. Not exactly the same thing, but apply the same concepts to the other brands. So ultimately what we want to do is make BRP the superstar, make the digital center of excellence and the marketing team superstars internally, and our role is to transfer as much knowledge as we can so that they are empowered to do it. Okay, what's coming up next? We're coming up, we still have about 15 minutes. Wrapping this up, what's coming up next? We're just entering the second phase of a pilot where we are deploying the same concepts with different teams, different marketing teams. We are, again, improving governance, agreeing on KPIs, agreeing on who's going to have access to what and how they're going to get access to it, what is going to be the frequency of those access, and so on. So that's the next the phase that we're working on right now, and eventually going to the point where we're going to be able to achieve the 20% marketing efficiency. One aspect of looking at the digital analytics maturity model is typically one level of maturity is about a year worth of effort. So there's no way that you can, go from what it was initially in the legacy phase and bring all of that to a level 4 like it is here without having the chance to gradually change the culture of the organization. Because that's what it is essentially. It is how you go from your traditional way of doing things where there were issues and some of it was good, some of it was bad, but how do you improve and bring a digital analytics mentality and culture? It takes time because we're working, ultimately, it's a lot of data, but ultimately we're working with people, and that's what makes the huge difference, and that's why it was so successful with BRP. So again, we're going to send you a white paper, and you can actually do a self-assessment yourself. No strings attached. There's an option if you want to be contacted. You check the box. Otherwise, we have hundreds and hundreds of entries in that, and we can provide a benchmark. So based on your geography, based on your vertical, we can give you a benchmark of where you stand in terms of governance, objectives, and everything. And we'll see just taking a step back and thinking about the process, thinking about the different aspects of your own environment, what are your strengths and weaknesses, just that will get you started. So the role of that approach, the role of the model, is to get the conversation going and think about what's good and what can be improved. So thank you, and we're going to go into Q&A. Thanks again to Mathieu for his tremendous help and willingness to work with us on this. And there's a lot of additional work coming on for other brands, but also along the way finding other ways or other means that we can do the work that will benefit everyone at BRP and the partners. So Anthony, back to you for the Q&A.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Stefan. And thank you for all that great information. A lot of good stuff shared there. And we do have some questions lined up for you. Looks like we've got about a little less than 10 minutes left here. If you have not yet entered a question and you still have one, go ahead and get it into that chat area. We're going to do our best to get to as many as we have the time remaining. So with that, let's go ahead, Stefan, and move into some questions here. The first one coming from, and I apologize if I mess up the name here, but I think it's Weeb. And the question being, why is it that dealers are considered black holes? And why is the problem being, it seems like it's a problem to ask them for the data and then feed them into the model. So any thoughts you can share on that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So dealers are independent businesses. They can be a BRP dealer, but they can also sell other brands and other products, and they are not obligated to share any information. So of course, some of them would be more open to the idea of sharing their data. And actually, it's one of the topics that in a future phase, as a next step, of course, we would like to reach to some dealers and say, hey, if we were able to give you, because it needs to be, at the end of the day, we want both parties to gain something out of it. So if we were able to provide more insight to the dealers, would they be willing to share some of their data? So that's absolutely one of the things that is being looked at. But for the pilot project, we established the scope. So scope is one of the 6 dimensions. So we established that if we try to go too far too fast, we're going to fail. So we decided that, okay, we're going to go up to generating leads for the dealer, and in the future phase, we're going to address the other aspect. And closing the loop on, and it's the same thing in automotive, when you send a lead to a dealer, you lose track of really what happens afterward because there's no, sometimes there are incentives to update the information afterward, but it's not always done. And when I'm saying black hole, it's not a negative way. It's just the reality, and there are many other verticals where the offline sales are actually not really visible, regardless of what you do online.
All right, great. Thanks so much for that. Our next question here coming from Brittany. She starts off by saying that her company sells to large businesses through brokered relationships, and I believe their website's purpose is to provide information and thought leadership specifically in the healthcare industry. So her question is, how would you measure success of a website if most of, for her case there, their major clients would not naturally fill out a lead form to convert? They'd rather pick up a phone and call the broker directly.
Yeah. So and that would be, I would say, similar to the media industry, or when you have a site that is more informational than transactional. So anything where your role is to inform your audience, the web serves as a proxy of what happens offline. So one way to measure that is we are measuring visits to the website, but visits doesn't really tell a lot. What is more interesting is to look at the concept of engaged visits. And an engaged visit can be defined in different ways. But the one I like is an engaged visit is someone who went on the site and viewed at least one of your core product page. Not the home page, not the search, not anything else but your real product. And over time, that gives you an appreciation of what is the impact of your website, really about the information of your core business, your product, what you sell or your service. And even in some cases, and I know the healthcare industry would be probably more difficult to get to, but you might find a couple of more, I would say, data-savvy clients or partners that would be willing to work with you on improving how much visibility you have. So even if you don't have the full visibility of your whole network, if there's a few of them that are willing to participate, at least it gives you some additional insight into what's going on. So again, it's a way to have a proxy of the online impact toward the offline reality.
All right. And earlier you were talking about the Digital Center of Excellence. And so we have a question here from Brennan, who is wondering what roles you involved in that and what some of the steps were that were taken in order to get the Center of Excellence started.
Yeah, so what's interesting about the Center of Excellence approach is you get people from different departments to share a common goal and a common desire to improve things. So how it got started is, I think the initial discussion was actually with the VP of IT and in collaboration with one of the senior person on the marketing side, and because there was some technology involved and everything. So that's how it got started. But the role that we play at Cardinal Path is often to facilitate those conversations. So with the amount of experience we have, we've seen, I would say, great and less stellar environments where there were many challenges. So we can bring that knowledge. The maturity assessment helps to alleviate some of the emotional aspect of that, and bringing an external party to do that actually helps, because if you are the messenger internally that comes in and say, oh, we're not so good at this and we suck at that, you can become the target, and you will get some people who are really more emotional. There's politics involved and miscommunication and everything. So by having someone external and independent who have seen so many others, that helps to get the DCOE started. And then it's bringing, we brought best practice about governance, defining KPIs, who to give access to. You know, is it an open bar that everyone can go in your web analytics platform and do whatever they want and run around the office and say, hey, this metrics is so good? Well, in reality, maybe it's not. So there's a big educational aspect to it. So that's what we did. Something that we do with some clients is actually what we call a RACI workshop. So we assess, we evaluate the roles and responsibilities, what are, for each task, who's responsible, accountable, consulted, or informed about a given thing. You know, who's going to have final authority to approve the KPIs? It's important to know. And so that's another area where we can help define the roles and responsibilities and the tasks that are involved.
And I think we've got time for one more question here, this one from Georgia, and you just mentioned KPIs. So her question being, are there any specific KPI tools that you could recommend?
In KPI tools, I guess what she's referring to is any tools to do dashboards. In the current for this project, we use Tableau software. I know there are a lot of digital analysts that are using Tableau. For a slightly different type of dashboards, we do a lot of work with a company called Clipfolio, which is pretty interesting also. But if she's referring more to KPIs and how to define them, actually, there's a good book. In fact, I think he wrote several books on the topic of key performance indicator by the author. The title of the book is actually Key Performance Indicators, and the author is David Parmenter. And I can share the details. He actually wrote several books on the topic, and in that book you will see a worksheet where it gives you a step-by-step approach to define your KPIs. So what is the right name or the best name for a KPI? Who's going to have ownership? What is the underlying data? And a bunch of attributes about your KPI that you should think about. And the exercise of filling that worksheet is actually much more difficult than it sounds. Defining good KPI is a huge task in itself. And of course, we can facilitate that.
Excellent. Well, Stéphane, I want to thank you on behalf of the audience for everything that you shared today. Also want to thank Mathieu for being with us earlier and all that information that he discussed as well. We are going to go ahead and wind things up here for today. Just a couple of quick reminders to everyone. We are still recording the full presentation, and this is going to be shared with you from Cardinal Path, so look for an email coming your way. It's going to contain a link to the full recording, and as Stéphane mentioned, they are going to be sharing a white paper as well. So we appreciate the fact that they'll be doing that, and so look for some more great information in that form as well. If you were able to join us today on Twitter, we certainly appreciate your involvement there. If not, you can still go and engage in that conversation later. As a reminder, the hashtag is up on the screen, and we did use hashtag CP Digital Marketing, so definitely get engaged in that conversation. So again, a big thank you to Cardinal Path for sponsoring today's webcast, as well as to ReadyTalk for providing the platform that we used. And if you'd like to learn more about ReadyTalk and their services, you can go to readytalk.com/AMA. Last but not least, of course, I'd like to thank you, the audience, for taking an hour from your busy day to spend with us. We hope you found this information helpful, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon on another AMA Thought Leader webcast. That does end our presentation for today. Thanks again for joining. Have a great rest of your day.